Okay, so thank you everyone. You know how the chat works. You know this is supposed to be interactive, so we will be launching questions and expecting you to share your insights. Today is about assessment, as you can see in the plan for the webinars. And the why behind this series, before we introduce ourselves, before I introduce our guest today, Cecilio. If you have been following us since the beginning of the series, you know our goals, but just for the ones joining today, because I know assessment is a topic that draws a lot of attention. We have like a three goals for the series. The first one is to devote some critical time to reflect on the framework and try to define a vision for our classrooms that is aligned with the New California framework, and then supporting you all to spread the message, right? Especially, of course, if you work in California, but all over the world, we know that the framework is already influential and is going to be very influential in as an official document for math education, and it's our responsibility as educators, as leaders, to help spread the word and help our co-teachers and our peers understand the depth of this framework. And the third goal is to bring a little bit of practical lens to the framework. And I know, Cecilia, you have many things prepared today to share specific tools, specific ideas to implement and to rethink assessment aligned to the framework. I see many people saying hi from many places. Let's see, Jackie from Chicago. Hello, Jackie. Tracy from San Diego. Mike from Bakersfield. Hello, Mike. Long time no see. Lodi. Then we have Tiffany. Oh, Tammy from Lodi. Tiffany from Livingstone. And Cecilio from Sacramento. Myself, I am in New York now. So today it's May 29th, if I'm not wrong. And today we're about to discuss about assessment, which is a difficult topic, right? And many people don't feel confident talking about assessment. And what I wanted to say before starting is that we do not bring you a final solution for assessment. Don't expect Cecilia and myself are not going to give you an algorithm for the perfect assessment. Assessment is subjective and it's a work in progress. But we're going to give and share with you many ideas from our experience and from our institutions on how to assess from a reach perspective, right? From a competency-based perspective. Just a little reminder, we have the last session next week with a question mark and some surprises coming for this last session on how to drive effective instructional change in the district. So maybe more from the admin's perspective. Okay, and today I have Cecilio Dimas with me. Cecilio, hello again.
Hello, good to see
Thank you.
you.
Thank you for joining us, Cecilio. Let me try to describe all your hats that you wear and all the work
Yes,
that the amazing work that you have been doing in California for many years. And correct me if I say something wrong, but Cecilio is the executive director of the SVMI, the Silicon Valley Mathematics Initiative. You discovered the SVMI on the other side, right? If I'm not wrong, you,
yes,
you were an assistant to their courses back in the 2002, and then after many years working with them and participating in PL and lesson study, which is another topic for an interesting PD that maybe we can do in the future. You became part of the SVME, so you crossed the road to the other side, right?
yes,
And you have been working with them since 2016, more or less, right?
yes. So almost 9 years. Yeah,
Almost 9 years.
yeah.
And you have been also at the Santa Clara County Office of Ed, right?
Yes, I was at the Santa Clara County Office of Education as a math coordinator, and then later as the director of the STEAM initiative, STEM plus the
Wow.
art. And that's where really a lot of the points of intersection between project-based learning and some bringing in a space for students to have choice about what it is that they're working on. And I think from that work, a lot of the importance of collaboration, creating a space for teachers to get together and analyze student work collectively and work together so that we're looking at the school's population of students as our students versus my students and your students. They're our students.
And when you say students, you have experience both in elementary and secondary education, right? So
Yes.
you have the broad perspective that this gives you. This is
Yes.
great. Awesome. All right, we probably can say many more things, but the best way to know someone is to hear them talk about their passion. And so I think we're ready to rumble. Are we?
Yes, we're ready to go. Thank you, Albert.
Okay, let's go. So if you have been following us, this slide is like our main slide. The 5 components for instructional design that encourage equitable outcomes and active and student engagement. Teaching big ideas, right? We discovered this with Kathy Williams from UCube. Using open tasks. We talk about this with Peter Liljedahl. We talked about social justice with Bernadette Salgarino. And we don't have a session specifically on questions, conjectures, reasoning, justification, which is like always there. But we felt that an interesting topic that is always surrounding the framework, and actually it's chapter 12, is assessment. So we decided that the session 5 out of 6 would be about assessment. And so we start with a question. You know us. So Cecilia and myself want to know, what is your opinion or what is your idea of assessment? Again, no right or wrong answers. We're not changing the Wikipedia definition of assessment with your answers, so no pressure. Just share your thoughts. You know how this works. You can scan with your phone. You can go to slido.com and type this little code down there, 7 numbers, 7 digits, or scan the QR code, as I was saying. And we want to see your answers in 3, 2, 1, go. Let's see. Let's give a couple minutes to the audience. Okay. Somebody's typing. Okay, Cecilio, can you see them? The
Yes.
answers that pop up?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
understanding students' knowledge. That's the first one. What else? This is a question that if you're not ready for the answers that you get, you can be lost like for 4 hours just discussing these answers, right? Determining a level of proficiency, which is, I think, related to understanding students' knowledge, right? Frequent testing, okay. Understanding how students think. Analyzing the results of students. Knowing where the students are, like locating them in their learning trajectory, right? In their learning path. What do we do next based on that assessment? And I know Cecilia will love this one, right? What to do with next based on the assessment?
Absolutely. I feel like we're taking we're gathering some information for our session
Yes.
this week here. Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. We're sensing the temperature of the room. Variety of methods to understand what students know and what gaps they have, how to fill these gaps, right? Understanding my classroom better. Measure of understanding to use for next teaching and learning steps. Understanding what's going on with their performance to inform instruction. This is all very interesting. And I think that we could, and we were not good doing this because it would take us a lot of time, but as we read the answers, Cecilia, don't you think that we could group them depending on what's the goal, right, of this assessment that we're doing? If we're like trying to diagnose and place our students and determine what they know, what they need to know better, or to change our ways of instruction, right? So sometimes we look at assessment and try to understand the kids, but sometimes we also try to understand us better as teachers.
Yes, I do think that some of the like connections to the components are definitely coming up in some of the responses that we're seeing here from the participants. Um, so I think this is
Okay.
useful information.
Useful info. You don't want to. I see that you don't want to spoil anything for the session, but now we have an idea of what you feel, right? And this is similar to that question that I always like to ask at the beginning of any session I do. Is to you, what is a successful math class? This is kind of open questions. Allow me or allow you as a PD provider to understand better your audience, so then you can craft a more tailored explanation for the audience. And I think we're all more or less on the same page. Most of the answers are 100% aligned with what we think and
And I
believe.
agree with you, Albert, that we could definitely categorize and bin these responses and also follow up with some additional questions.
Okay, so I think we're ready. Thank you
Yes.
all for your answers and keep the chat open. Keep interacting with us. We're loving this. And let's see. So we added this quote. Maybe, Cecilio, you want to read it? Your English is better than mine.
Sure. I don't know about that, but I will gladly read it. The California framework emphasizes that assessment is a critical step in the teaching and learning process for students, teachers, administrators, and parents. It is a systemic collection and analysis of information to improve student learning and should serve to enhance student learning and support the development of positive mathematical identities.
I love this because it is not focusing on grading, right? Which is probably the first word that comes to your mind in general, when you talk to parents, when you talk to people who is not familiar with our view of what is education in the 21st century. Many people just summarize assessment in grading, right? Which is or might be part of an assessment and might be an interesting part of the assessment, but it is a very tiny little thing in a bigger world, which should allow us to, as this says, collect information to improve the student learning, right?
I agree. I also think that when we are looking at this statement here, when we're looking at the development of positive mathematical identities, that also makes me think about the importance of the collaborative space we build in the classroom and the opportunities for student discourse, because it's through the exchange of ideas and strategies and errors and possible representations that a student might use or build depending on the grade level. It really creates a space for those ideas to surface so that the student learning is enhanced.
Hmm. And let me share with you here, because I resonate with what you're saying, is an example that I always put, and we're not doing it today, but it works beautifully. I write a sentence in Spanish. I ask a teacher in the audience to read it out loud. And when the teacher reads it out loud, the sentence is in Spanish. So I try to find someone who is not proficient in Spanish, of course, for the example to work better. So the victim, my victim in the audience, reads the sentence out loud, and I always grade it, right? I say, that's a 7 out of 10, do it better. And the teacher at the beginning kind of panics, tries to read it, hesitating, tries to read it again. And I say, that's a 7.1, do it better. And I push until the teacher says, but you're not helping me. And I'm like, well, I am providing you a grade. Isn't that helping you to improve? And then, of course, we all here see where my example is going, right? It's that grading or giving a number to the learner sometimes, most of the times, I dare to say, is not the best way to help me improve, right? Which is what this quote and your reflection was about. So 3 key ideas, and then we will be sharing Cecilio and the SVMI experience on this. So the difference between assessment of and for learning, 3 key ideas related to this distinction, right? Assessment should be inclusive. We have been talking about this for several weeks with Harold, with Ma Bernadette. Assessment should be inclusive and consider all students, right? Including those with multicultural, linguistic diversity, right? Assessment should be flexible. We should not set assessment in stone and always do the same and at the same time, right? So assessment is subjective and it should be flexible. So we should have the flexibility of allowing multiple means of expression, not always assess the written assessment, but also the speaking, the drawing, the manipulatives can be, as you were saying now, representations that we value in our assessments to provide this feedback that allows the students to improve. And then the framework highlights 2 types of assessment. This is very well known, probably for everyone, but formative assessment versus summative assessment. The formative assessment is that continuous process of giving feedback and adjust in real time, let's say, both teaching and learning practices in the classroom, while summative assessment is more like a conclusion, right? And more related to this grading that I was talking about. And it's this try to assess the achievement after the learning has occurred and when we probably most of the times we cannot change anything because it's too late, right?
Albert, I also think when we're looking at the second bullet point that assessment should be flexible, it also thinks makes me recall work with students with special needs and when we're looking at alternative means of expressions. And so we're
Absolutely.
looking at working with all populations, I think also being very mindful of what are the alternative means of expressions that our students could lean into or utilize to communicate their understanding. And I do think the way in which you assess students is also going to guide how you instruct students. If you are leaning into a specific, structure for an assessment, and your instruction matches that exclusively with the absence or in the absence of other ways of expressing an idea, then when students have the opportunity or are asked to justify their thinking or tell us how you know or show us how you know, they might struggle because they haven't been given ample opportunity to play with those different representations and not just play with the representation, but communicate it to others, including themselves in that metacognitive reflective process, which we know is crucial when you're learning. We learn by reflecting on what we've done, not simply by doing. And assessments can be a tool, depending on, especially if you're utilizing formative assessment, a tool to help you in that process.
Hmm. And this is not just for the younger ones, right? Because you're
No.
mentioning this representation and manipulatives, and sometimes some teachers might think, oh, this is for the younger kids. No, no, this applies to any grade, right?
And that last bullet point, I also think about like when we are utilizing a structure or routine that might be branded as formative, how we use that assessment really is going to be the driver of whether it was truly formative or summative. And is this a space to talk more about that, or should I hold on to that, Albert?
What what was
Or
that?
may I say more about that, or should I wait until later?
No, I think yeah, that's a good question. If we say it now, then we probably can skip it later. But I think that we will have plenty of opportunities to
Okay.
dive deeper into these two types of assessment. That sometimes what happens is that we try to put a line between no, this is formative and this is summative, and many times things get mixed, right, as you were saying, and we can use as a summative assessment something that was formative in design and the other way around, right? So this
Absolutely, absolutely. Like we've seen open-ended tasks with low floor, high ceiling tasks used in ways in which they weren't designed to be used.
yeah.
Where like we use direct instruction for that task. So the discovery and the exploration and the sense making and the opportunity to autonomously apply what they've learned gets taken away when the students are then guided through this is how we do this problem. So our friends who teach language arts or work with younger students where they're also focusing on learning how to read, that idea, like one of my second grade colleagues in Hayward has always highlighted for me this idea that we want to use a problem to have it be a transferable skill to another problem type, like the way we do with language arts. Like we don't want to teach students how to read a book. We use this book, whatever the book is, as a tool to help read so that the students then can apply that to the next book that they read. So it's never the goal to teach students how to do a particular problem. We want to use that problem as a tool for them to then lean into it as they then engage in the next problem. And I think formative assessment is definitely a helpful tool in that space. And we'll delve into that more in a short bit.
Yeah, to me, what summarizes is that assessment is an attitude. Assessment is not a thing you do today and not tomorrow. Assessment is a way of being in the classroom, trying to
Yes.
give valuable feedback and using some of this information also to inform your decisions as a teacher. And then I wanted to ask you about your initiative, right? The Silicon Valley Math Initiative, and this is your institution, and you have these re-engagement lessons, and I think most of the session today will be around these re-engagement lessons. So just an introduction to it, Cecilia.
Yes, so and we're going to delve more deeply into this in a short bit, but the California Math Framework Chapter 12 assessment chapter really does spotlight the process of having teachers look at student work to create a follow-up lesson that we would call a re-engagement lesson, and we make the distinction that a re-engagement lesson is different than a reteach lesson because we're using actual student work, student representation, student thinking to help move instruction forward. And that goes back to the idea that we need a safe space in the classroom for students to be able to feel that when we bring ideas, whether they are on the way thinking or are showing a level of performance at the grade level or course, that it's a safe space for us to be able to talk about their work. And so I think in places where re-engagement lessons are very successful, there's also probably a high likelihood that it's also going to be a classroom environment that feels safe, where student discourse is taking place, and that students aren't not that students are also engaging and asking really strong questions of each other to clarify their own reasoning, but also make sure that they're understanding what their classmates are saying.
Hmm. So everyone is invited to the party, right? Everyone feels
Yes,
invited to the party.
yes.
All right. Now, if you read Building Thinking Classrooms by Peter Lijedal, you probably know this example. But even if you know it, imagine that you're going to a parachuting school, right? And you're about to jump. Have you ever jumped from a plane, Cecilio, like scuba
Um,
diving? No, scuba diving
no.
is underwater. Skydiving.
Skydiving,
Yes.
no. Like that, to know me is to know that I have an irrational fear of heights. So that
Okay, then
would be
that's out of
something
the
that I
equation.
would only do if I needed to, and I'd be screaming the whole entire way down.
Okay, then imagine, Cecilia, that you are you are required to do this, right? And you are in a parachuting school, and they tell you, okay, you can choose your instructor. You have A, B, or C, Abigail, Ben, or Charlie, right? And they said to you, we can share with you what is their parachuting packing score, so their level of ability preparing your parachuting pack to jump of the last week, right? And that's the orange spot that you see here,
Okay.
right? So I asked the audience as well, and you can answer in the chat A, B, or C. Who do you prefer? With which instructor do you jump into the skies of California? Who is your choice? Let's see the chat. Come on, I want to see the brave audience we have. A, B, or C? Let's see what they think. Tracy is getting me. We don't have enough information. There you go. And then Faride at the control of Innovamat account. How would I know? Hmm. Cecilio, are you feeling the same? You need
I'm
more
feeling this,
information?
definitely feeling the same way. Yes.
Right, but sometimes when we do a final exam and we're not opening the door about state testing, that's out of today's debate because we wouldn't finish the session. But when we do that, right, when we do a final exam or a final test, even at the end of a unit, at the end of a something, right, and we assess the students and we say, okay, this is your grade. What do you do with this information? Is it helping you make choices, make decisions, inform your teaching practices? Is it helping the kids to improve, or it's too late, right? So as Tracy was saying, we don't have enough information. Of course, this is an obvious example for all of us, but it's important to face these with an alternative, such as this one, right? The moment you, as I was saying, assessment is an attitude. So you don't wait to assess only at the end, but assessment is an ongoing thing that allows you to have meaningful conversations with your students, that allows you to reinform your teaching practices. And you can gather this information as frequent as possible. And I know it's impossible to gather information about 30 kids all the time with all of them, I know. But there are some techniques and some ideas that we will be sharing today that allow you to, let's say, make this orange line as continuous as possible, right? As dense as possible. So have as many orange dots as possible, which at the end give you a clear idea. So now if I ask you, Cecilio, who do you prefer to jump with? Even though the three of them have the same score the last weekend, who do you trust more?
I think that I would definitely be maybe possibly working with Abigail because she has a really great line that she has been developing over time and a level of expertise that continues to grow and it's consistent.
Exactly, exactly. So Abigail is improving. We all can see that. So our feedback to her, and I'm jumping between context, I know, but our feedback to her and everything is positive, and it's okay. Keep doing what we are doing. With Ben, we have a different approach. It's like you were very good, but you're now relaxed, or maybe this new topic that we're teaching is out of your comfort zone, but something needs to happen because you were better yesterday, so you're not progressing. And Charlie is not consistent, right? I probably need a meeting with Charlie's parents to know what's going on, right? So this is the example that Peter adds in his book. He has some chapters on assessment that I strongly recommend. But to take a step back, right? And with this idea of having as many orange dots as possible, when we are about to assess, at least I speak about myself and my first 3-4 years in this profession, I did not ask myself these questions. I just jumped into what I was supposed to do according to the system back in Spain. I just moved on, right? So there are three fundamental questions that we need to ask ourselves before jumping into assessment blindly. The first one is, why do we want to assess? Why? And there are many reasons, and those reasons are your purpose. And it might change depending on the day or depending on the moment. The second one is, what do we want to assess? And the moment you know the purpose, you then can define better the what you want to assess. And the third one, once you know why you want to assess and what are you going to assess, then you can decide better how. In my experience, we tend to jump directly into the how without reflecting enough on why and what are we going to assess, right? So I'm gonna go through the three questions real quick. The first one, the purpose. Why do we want to assess? And of course, we started with the dichotomy formative versus summative assessment, right? But we can dive a little deeper and explore different purposes. I don't want you in the audience to think that this is a full list, that there are only 4 purposes possible. No, this is a rather good list, but you could add more. And now I want you to think of what we saw at the question, what is assessment to you? That you answered, all of you answered in the audience, because most of you were targeting one of these 4 purposes. The first one is a diagnosis purpose. So from our perspective as teachers, we want to check what students know and what do they know, what they don't know, right? What they know and what are their gaps. And from the student's perspective, the students need to check their own understanding. Then another purpose we could have is adapt, right? It's not just checking what they know and what we need to reteach, but adapt our teaching practices or our learning strategies. So from the teacher's perspective, we adapt our teaching strategies. This is not working. They are not understanding this. We need more repetitions, or we need another approach. We need another strategies. I might provide manipulatives. So you change. And I think the re-engaging sessions that we're going to discover with Cecilio later are most of the focus is in the adapt as a teacher, right? And then from the student's perspective is decide and adapt the learning strategies. Of course, in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, this adaptation and this decision making from the students is very small, but as they grow and as they become more experienced learners, they can adapt better. The third one is improve. Of course, this is the goal, the ultimate goal of education, right? Improve and learn. So provide valuable feedback to the students. This is the example that I was referring to about this sentence in Spanish and giving you a grade in a number. That doesn't work. That is because this is not a valuable feedback. It is not helping you improve. So it is not targeting this purpose. From the student's perspective, is discover improvement opportunities as well. I need to know what I am missing and where is yet to be learned, etc. And last but not least, and here probably it's where the summative assessment makes more sense in my experience, is inform. Inform who, from our perspective? The system. And the system includes the parents, so the families, and the administration, right? We need to tell the administration, the state, the county office of ed, or whatever the institution in your region, in your country is on top of you, you have to inform them about the learning of the students. And then from the student's perspective, and this is up to debate, but the students also want to, especially when they approach university, they want to compare with others. So sometimes the goal here is I need information about how am I ranked because the access to the university or whatever, right? So I think this is a great list of 4 different purposes that you might have. The thing is that sometimes we just jump into assessing without thinking, okay, wait a minute. If your purpose is to adapt your strategy, you might try a different thing. If your purpose is to improve or to inform, you might try a different thing, right? And not just jump into assessing without at least asking and answering this question first. Does this make sense? Yes, Cecilia, we're good?
I think we're good, and then we will definitely add on, build on to this. Yes.
Yes, awesome. The second one is what, right? So the goals. And I imagine these as 3 layers. If you have heard me in some PDs or anyone from Innovamat or talking about the what do we need to teach or what students need to learn, there are 3 layers. Layer 1 is content, right? Addition, subtraction, what's a triangle, area, um, and equations, right? And also procedures, so adding, subtracting, decomposing, finding the greatest common factor, whatever. Layer 2 is the math practices. So we need also to assess how good are our kids in making sense of problems, in attending to precision, and all the mathematical practices need to be assessed. Albert, does that mean that we need to grade them? No, I'm not saying that you need to grade them. I'm saying that you need to assess them. And assessing, we already discussed that it's many more things than grading. It's giving feedback. How are we expecting our students to progress in the SMPs if we're not providing them feedback on the SMPs? And in my experience, we don't have enough tools as teachers sometimes, or we feel that we don't have enough tools to assess and give feedback on the mathematical practices. We feel much more prepared to attend layer 1 than layer 2. And then layer 3 is soft skills, right? Sometimes the student is not focused because he has some issues at home. So you cannot assess and say, okay, this kid doesn't know how to add. Maybe the problem, the issue is somewhere else. Maybe it's that the kid cannot collaborate. Maybe it's that the kid cannot persevere. And this is a problem that many kids have these days. They surrender, they give up in 2 minutes, right? They don't keep thinking. So we need to know that there are 3 things, three different layers that when we design our assessments and we think about our assessments, we need to think which one of the layers are we targeting. And it might be more than one, but at least know this. And
And
last but not least, oh, sorry.
oh, going back to the other side, I think also when we look at layer 2, some systems in California might be looking at math practices and also with that problem solving, being able to identify a problem type and be able to apply the standards for mathematical practice from the perspective of problem solving, especially if we're looking at math practice number 1, where we're making sense and persevering and solving problems. And then a lot of our school systems are they with level 3 are looking at the social emotional well-being of students and also the idea of belonging, as well as other issues of or concerns of classroom environment and school safety. So I think the soft skills layer 3 we can definitely relate to with different labels.
Absolutely, absolutely. And do you feel, Cecilia, that most of the teachers that you have worked with, even yourself, we feel more confident in layer 1 than in layer 2 and 3,
I
right?
think that there are more tools available for layer 1,
Yeah,
especially as we're entering into the space of AI and other tools for correcting and providing a score of student work. And I think that there are definitely some great tools out there that are helpful for efficiency. And then but as long as we have a balance where we are ensuring that we are looking at what our students are saying and doing as part of their engagement in mathematics, so that we can fine tune the lessons that we create and the units that we plan for our students to better match where they currently are, to bridge them where we need them to be.
hmm, absolutely. I agree. So, okay, we're in the third and last question. How do we assess? Okay, we already decided why and what. So we enter these how do we assess loop. First, we gather evidences. And there are many questions. We're providing more questions and answers at this part of the presentation, I know. When, you have to decide when are you gathering evidences? Is it every day? Is it at the end? About what? How do you register them? That is scalable and you can do it with all the kids. Then you will analyze the evidences. Well, sometimes it's the teacher analyzing, sometimes it's peer assessment, so other kids assessing their classmates. What's the reference? So what do we consider excellent or good as a reference? What errors as teachers do we anticipate that our kids will make? And what are we going to do if those errors appear? And then when you gather and you have analyzed these evidences, you are ready to make decisions, right? And how do you give this feedback to the kid? Is it a sentence orally on the spot, or it's a written comment? How do you give this feedback? How do you or what do you adapt as a teacher? Are you changing next day class depending on what the kids did today? How do you redesign, re-engage in the session? This is what we're exploring in a second. And then who do we inform? Is it only the kid? Is it the whole class? It's the parents? Is the admins? Many questions that need to be answered, right? So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we're going to jump to a framework that probably many of you in the audience know. Okay, let me stop. Okay, I think we're good.
Think we're good?
Yes, we are. I can see Mr. Dr. Alan Schomfield here. Awesome.
Excellent. Excellent. So, friends, one of the things that we were also wanting to highlight is in chapter 1 and 2, as we're looking at the in the framework, the true math framework, teaching for robust understanding of mathematics, is also highlighted and spotlighted, especially as we're looking at the 5 components that the series is built upon. So when we're looking at the true math framework, we are looking at these 5 dimensions. So the mathematics is definitely important, and that's where we see connections to the big ideas. Cognitive demand is also a place where we can see the open and engaging tasks. Equitable access, when we provide a space for students to share their thinking and we prioritize student reasoning, we can make connections to equitable access. And I think even more importantly, make connections to the way in which we are creating learning experiences for students to see themselves as people who utilize mathematics, as well as their classmates, as people who are also users of mathematics. And we utilize formative assessment to help drive and fine tune our lessons. Albert and I in previous conversations were also highlighting that a task like an exit ticket can be a wonderful tool to use for formative assessment. And it's only formative assessment if what I collect on Tuesday, I use either on Wednesday, Thursday, or later on that week. And I adapt my lesson, or maybe I bring in a specific math talk to address some trend of understanding or misunderstanding or emerging understanding that has surfaced as a result of that exit ticket. And if I just use the exit ticket and I check my box that they turned it in, then that actually was it was used summatively and not formatively. As we take a look at some of these descriptions of formative assessment, could you take a read of this for me, Albert?
Yeah, the extent to which the teacher solicits student thinking and subsequent instruction responds to those ideas by building on productive beginnings or addressing emerging misunderstandings. And powerful instruction meets students where they are and gives them opportunities to move forward.
Thank you. So we were wanting to spotlight this dimension from the True Math framework, but I did also want to give you an opportunity to take a look at um, the dimensions from the student perspective themselves. So we are spotlighting formative assessment, but we are going to ask that you take a read of these 11 prompts from the True Math framework from the student perspective, like when we're observing a lesson from the lens of the student. These are some very helpful prompts. So we're going to give you a moment to take a read and then just type in, if you could, which of these prompts resonate with you and why.
I am amazed on you typing and speaking at the same time. I love that. Okay, which prompt of these 11? Maybe as people think we can read them real quick. Cecilio, do you mind if I read them?
I don't mind, no.
Okay, the content. What's the big idea of the session, right? And in the lesson,
Mhm.
how does this connect to what I already know, right? Math is very like cumulative. So how does this connect to previous learnings? Cognitive demand. How long am I given to think and to make sense of things? This needs to be quick, like a well-known fact, or I have the time to problem solve, right? What happens if I get stuck? And am I invited to explain things or just give answers straightforward? Equitable access to content. Do I get to participate in meaningful math learning? Can I hide or be ignored? In what ways am I kept engaged? Right? This relates a lot with what Peter calls this studenting, yeah? Students trying to be like hidden in the classroom. Then agency, ownership, and identity. What opportunities do I have to explain my ideas? In what ways are they built on? How am I recognized as being capable and able to contribute? This is very much related to what we explored with Harold and Ma Bernadette in the previous sessions. And then formative assessment. How is my thinking included in classroom discussions? Does instruction respond to my ideas and help me think more deeply? You can see there is no third bullet point that says, what is my grading, right?
Yeah, and I do think that as we look at the topic of formative assessment specifically, that when we are utilizing any instructional minutes, that we can also be using it as an opportunity to gather information. And so the routines that we utilize in the classroom are also really, really helpful tools, or can be helpful tools in gathering data to give us the green light or the yellow light to move forward to the next part of the lesson that we have planned. So we find ourselves living in that space, Albert, of, are we the empire? Are we, when we're looking at student work, are we making decisions like, is it right or wrong? And that's enough, like our call is our call. Or are we looking at being a coach? Shout out to the Golden State Warriors. That we're looking at being a coach of, when we look at the student work, how can we use what's there to help tell the math story? So when we look at those dimensions and we look at them from the student perspective, I think that we can also see ways in which we can authentically and in a safe way and in a respectful way bring forward student thinking so that we help advance the math story that we are trying to build over the course of the grade of the year or the course. So I
Yeah,
think
imagine.
go ahead.
No, no. I was reading the answers, and as you were talking, I was like imagining a coach that just tells you, "Yeah, we lost. Next day we will do better." What? That a coach? You have to help me throughout the process, right? Not just give me the result. And then we have three answers. I don't know if you want me to read them or we just move on. What do you
I
think?
think that we're definitely seeing a trend about positive identity being foundational and the connections to identity, because one of the things I think is really, really important is we don't want to unintentionally shut students down from the curiosity and the beauty of mathematics. Like mathematics is a very beautiful subject that has so many connections to so many different parts of our world, whether we're looking at geometry or we're looking at data science or we're looking at making sense of number, or the beauty of algebra, like for those who don't want to handwrite or type out all these different stories, algebra is beautiful because it helps you share relationships in shorthand. Um, but I do see some very strong connections to formative assessment and also to the classroom culture and pieces. So we have a cycle that we have been utilizing called the short formative assessment cycle, where we give a task, and the task having it be chunky. I know Harold uses that word, a chunky math problem,
Yes.
a word that a task that has many opportunities for divergence. And then we use that student work to help us guide instruction by analyzing it. And when we're analyzing it, we don't even have to actually put a pen to the paper and put a score. We can bin and sort or take screenshots of specific trends that are surfacing. So then that helps us then be able to use those prompts or those two representations, and then we bring that back to the class for further discussion. And so that way, then a student who got a perfect score, if we were to have scored it, they still have something to talk about. They still have something to contribute, as well as a student who maybe they use a starting point of 1 when the starting point in the story was 0, but everything else was similar in their work. And through the conversation, they realize the importance of the starting point, or they realize the importance of what was the quantity that I had at the beginning of the story. And that fine tuning of work and collaboration is really powerful. And that's really a strong connection to this idea of re-engagement. Albert, will you read the orange text while I read the blue?
Yes. So in reteaching, we teach the lesson again.
Versus re-engagement, we revisit student thinking.
We address basic skills that are missing.
With re-engagement, we address conceptual understanding.
In reteaching, we do the same or similar problems over again.
With re-engagement, we examine the task from a different perspective.
In reteaching, we practice more and more to make sure students learn the procedures.
With re-engagement, students critique student approaches and solutions to make connections.
And the cognitive level in reteaching is usually lower than in re-engagement.
And with re-engagement, it's usually higher. So we have some statements that we use to help us with navigating re-engagement. And one of the other things too that I wanted to spotlight is whether you're using a MacMarks performance task or a performance task from a curriculum or any other type of performance task, being very strategic on what slice of the task are we going to focus in on. And so I wanted to share a handout, and I'll place it in the chat. I'll just call it handout, though it's virtual. The idea that when we're creating a re-engagement lesson, I want to provide it with a tool. So when we're looking at the student work and you're identifying a trend, what's going to be the learning goal? And I think, Albert, you highlighted this before. It's kind of like the guiding light, the beacon. What is our goal for bringing forward this next prompt or this lesson? And then based off of the learning goal or goals, we then look for student work to help tell the story. And then what prompts do we want to ask the students as we go through the learning goal, selecting the student work, and then the prompts? What questions do we want to ask the students to create a space for them to make the connections? I'm seeing a hand up. Albert, are we able to take the hand?
I don't know what's the option, but maybe Tammy can share her thoughts in the chat.
Okay.
So I will read them out loud as soon as you share, Tammy. I'll be sharing with with the audience and with Cecilio the interaction, and we will make sure that we answer you.
So we wanted to, as we were giving some time for Tammy to type out her question, again, we did want to, since we have highlighted that formative assessment is such an important part of assessment at the classroom level, at a school, at a grade level or course, math department, really, really helpful tool to use, mindset to use when we're looking at student work. We wanted to make sure that we provided you with a tool or a template outline, friends, to be able to take home and use with your colleagues. So we
So
have,
Cecilio, can we see an example, right? We're seeing an example, right, in a second.
yes,
So I
yes.
think that's the best way, because to me, these are ideas resonate a lot with what I would love for my assessment practices in my classroom would look like. But then the day-to-day instruction, like it's me alive, right? It's like
Yes.
I don't have time to think about it.
And that's the beauty of like with re-engagement, if you make the commitment to creating a re-engagement prompt, like a re-engagement question, like it doesn't need to necessarily be a full lesson. When we're talking about re-engagement lesson, it's re-engagement prompts stacked on top of each other strategically. If students do well with this prompt, then I'm going to move on to my next prompt. Like each set of re-engagement prompts of student work give you either the green light or the yellow light to move forward. If it's a red light, then you pause, regroup. And sometimes students will go in directions that we weren't ready to go into or go towards. So then it's okay to pause and give yourself some time to regroup, rethink, reach out to some colleagues and have some conversation, whether they're colleagues in your building or in a social media space or some other place where you go to get support with ideas. But it's definitely okay to pause on the teachable moment and get some more information.
I
So
love
I
that.
wanted to take a quick look at a task that we have called buttons, or that we utilize called buttons. In the chat, I put the link to the actual full task, but for our example here in our space together, we really wanted to hone in on question number 3. So here we see a pattern of buttons. Gita is playing with buttons that she found from her grandmother. Maybe she was doing some counting collections with maybe with her kindergarten, first grade buddies. But here we have a pattern. And so we're looking, the question that we really honed in on is question number 3. And so when we're looking at question number 3, I'm going to share, Albert, is it okay to go ahead and share the student work?
Yeah.
Okay. So when we're looking at question number 3, we saw that there was a trend in the student work. Most students answered for question 3A 34 buttons. So if we would have
Hmm.
looked at the 34 buttons, we could have said, yes, they got it, I can move on. But then taking a closer look at the justification, we saw something the team saw something really interesting. So this student wrote in shorthand, I multiplied, so the IX, I multiplied 11 times 3, and I added 1 to get to 34. And then they wrote, I added 1 for the black button in the middle. So they're highlighting the relationship between the red and the black button. Sorry, the white and the black button. And then learner B also got 34, but they said that they started with the 4 and then kept adding 3. So they started with 4 and they kept adding 3 until they got to the 11th pattern, and they also got 34. So with re-engagement, we can use the actual student work and the justification to create a conversation. So in this class, what we would then do is ask the students, showing them one at a time. So learner A, how is learner A making sense of the mathematics? And we want them to have a turn and talk conversation, because going back to the true math framework, we don't want students to hide or be ignored. So we want to make sure that they are turning and talking with their shoulder partner, and that they have some type of friendly accountability. Maybe it's a handout, maybe it's a dry erase board, maybe it's a post-it note, something where they're writing down what it is that they think learner A did. And then we ask them a similar prompt for learner B. And maybe in that space, we can go from partner to pair square to table group, so that then they are conversing with others as well. But we really are strategically wanting to make sure that we're inviting students to participate and that they aren't able to hide or be ignored. And so instantly we want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to share their thinking, and that there's some type of artifact collected in that process. So
Hmm.
Albert, I've talked really fast about this one little re-engagement prompt. What questions have emerged for you as I've shared this example?
I think that the audience can also participate and share their thoughts. Here, the key thing is how answers hide thinking, right? Sometimes, or showcase thinking, and how allowing them to participate in different ways, and making these questions orally with manipulatives, as you were saying before, right? Maybe an answer can be just building the shape 11, and that's showing the process. And in my experience, there is much more richness in having a full session discussing these two or more different ways of thinking, and emphasizing which one do we feel everyone feels it's more efficient and why, and guiding, of course, the conversation as a teacher, than doing 10 different exercises on patterns.
Yeah, the other thing too that I was really excited about this particular task with and having this trend surface in the student work is the idea that learner A is communicating to us that they're seeing the multiplicative relationship already. They're seeing the relationship between input output,
Yeah.
between pattern number and the number of white buttons. We're seeing that way of thinking emerge in the work. And with learner B, we're seeing them apply and flex their understanding of additive reasoning, which also is, again, another wonderful tool to use. And students are using it all the time. But then I know that when I pick this task, based off of what students are showing me, I have an idea of what reasoning avenue they're taking. So are they looking at additive or multiplicative? And then when they have those conversations with each other, it is really powerful for them to be able to make sense of why someone might use multiplication versus why someone might use addition, and have that conversation. Like the level of student discourse and even tension with, like, I don't know why you would ever want to use multiplication. It's so much easier just to keep adding 3. And others are saying, well, what if you make a mistake and you miss a 3? Like,
Or what if I
those
ask you the pattern 125? Then are you going
are,
to be adding
yes.
forever? Hmm.
Exactly.
So
So there's just so much beauty in the conversations that can occur. And so picking,
actually, I have a question for learner B, which is, how did you know how many threes did you have to add? I see 10, if I'm not counting wrong. Yes, 10. 3 times 10 is 30. So how do you know it's 10 and not 11 or 9, right? So there's a lot of conversation within this question as well.
absolutely. And that's where, again, going back to those five components of using an open and engaging task, a low floor, high ceiling task rooted in a big idea, giving students the opportunity to share their reasoning and us as teachers prioritizing their justification, be able to spotlight the thinking and trends that have surfaced in the classroom is really quite empowering. And then as we move forward with instruction, we can use this task as an anchor. So then when we go to the next unit or the next big idea and we're building on and adding on, we can ask the students, if they ask us clarifying questions, we can ask them, is this similar or different to the buttons task? Like, how might you use what you learned in that task in this problem? The way we would with language arts or in science or in social studies when we're comparing different events or political leaders. There's definitely some really beautiful anchor experiences because we are social people, even if we're shy like me, and using a task as a way to have a common learning experience, I think is really, really powerful.
And what do we tell, Cecilia, to these teachers? I've heard this sometimes, right? This anxiety that appears when you are, especially when you are a teacher at the beginning of your career, right? And you're not sure to be able to manage all these conversations and all this because you might feel unexperienced and you don't know exactly what are all the avenues that the kids might take, right?
No, I think that that's where the power of just giving yourself permission to do work with a re-engagement prompt. It's kind of like a math talk. So if we do a warm up or a math talk that's like 10 minutes, like trying that space out for a re-engagement prompt can be a really helpful step into creating re-engagement lessons. And as long as you have a learning goal that to anchor yourself with or in, and then you use the student work very strategically to help you tell that story. We lean into, as an organization, an older NCTM article called Never Say Anything a Kid Can Say. And
Yeah,
so
I
we
love that one.
also use re-engagement as a way to live that mantra of we never want to be able to say what the students have already said. So if they say it in the work, let's elevate and give them the opportunity to share it with more. Let's elevate their voice because if someone already said it and or wrote it, did it, drew it, built it, we need to give them the opportunity to share that idea with others. And so the prompts that we ask also then are rooted more in focusing questions versus funneling questions, which is another article that we lean into of questioning or patterns of questioning.
Mhm.
Really helpful tool there. So in this really um, rapid fire space here, Albert. I hope that our participants have a better understanding of the idea of re-engagement.
Yeah, and they can read more. We will be sharing some links at the end. You can, as Harold kept saying in his session and well, in our session 2 weeks ago, and I keep saying since then every day, this is just an appetizer.
Yes,
This
an
is just an
appetizer.
appetizer. If you want more, you can go deeper, right?
Absolutely.
Jess is asking to link these two articles that you mentioned, Cecilia. I don't know if you have the links easy enough. If not, what we can promise is that we can add them to the presentation, and as we share the presentation, the two links can be at the end. If you have them at hand, we can share them in the chat.
I think that some of them might be behind a password. Like I'm not sure, Albert, but we can definitely share the title. We can definitely share the
Exactly,
title.
exactly,
Yes.
exactly. No, no, not the full text.
Yeah.
Of course, the title, and then if you have access to the articles of the NCTM to your membership, you can read them, and some of them, if they are old enough, are open to the general public. Yes. Okay, so do you think that we're ready for these last 15 minutes to see a couple more examples on other authors beyond what we shared from Silicon Valley,
I think
Cecilia?
so. Yes.
Okay, so let me try to share my screen. Let's see if I can take
Uncut.
over.
You should be able to take over.
Did I take over? Can you see it?
Try one more time. I think I accidentally took away control, Albert. Now I gave it back. Try again.
This is a coup. Let's see. Okay. Can you see it?
Not yet.
Let's see. What about now?
I think you need to share your screen again.
I think I am sharing. Yeah, the
Okay,
audience says
got
that
it.
they can see it. Okay, so we just come from the buttons example, right? And one of my favorite things when we are trying to inform our instruction, right, as teachers, and this comes a lot with experience, right? The more time you have taught a specific grade, the more you anticipate the common mistakes students will make. And as we were preparing the session with Cecilio, you made me a really good point, Cecilio, about you do not to do things just in case, right? And this is also a very Harold sentence, right? So
Ah,
no, because I know that kids will make this mistake, so I will explain them, hey, this is very important, don't make this mistake. No, let the mistake happen. Let the nature of how we build conceptual understanding just happen. But this is important, anticipate the mistakes, because then when you see them, you know what to do next and how to move on from there. So use
yeah,
that
and
as information.
absolutely, and there's so many different instructional routines that we could use, or mini lessons with re-engagement, or even as students are as you're working the room and walking the room and observing students, if you see the error happen in one spot of the room and you don't see it in another spot where they got it correctly, strategic matchmaking. There are
Yeah.
lots of different things that we can do again to live the mantra of never say anything a kid can say, and give students the opportunity to help clarify things with each other.
So here we are observing Cambridge Espresso. I don't know if you in the audience know about this initiative by Cambridge University. This is like a series of short summaries of what research says on different topics in math education. It's a lovely series. It's a 2 pages per topic, and it's just a condensation. And then if you want more, you can always uh, dive deeper and find the sources and go deeper to these studies. But I love how they summarize everything in just 2 pages, right? And there are topics as specific as fractions, or here, this one is about the equal sign and how kids, especially in elementary, interpret the equal sign, right? So here, I covered with question marks the beginning, so the legend of this graph, so you cannot know. These are the solutions offered to the question 8 plus 4 equals something plus 5 by US school pupils at different ages, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, grade 6. Right? So now, and this will be probably the last exercise we ask our audience to do with us, what do you think each color represents? Right? Make some guesses, right? You don't need to give me all the colors, but make some guesses. What do you think is orange? What do you think dark blue stands for? And light blue and middle blue? I don't know. Some ideas. Hmm. The answer, the right answer, right? Let's say, is
Tracy says dark blue may be 12.
oh, 12. And why 12 and not 13 or 11? Why 12, right? We probably can anticipate what Tracy is thinking, and we probably have seen this in our classes a lot. Just adding 8 and 4. Yes, thank you, Tracy. Yes, this is what this, and spoiler, I said that this espresso was about the meaning of the equal sign, and this is the problem here. The kids that say 12 mostly are interpreting 8 plus 4 equals as execute in the calculator. So we click execute button, and that's 12, and then I will add 5 or whatever you want me to add. They don't see the equal sign as a balance, but rather as an execution, right? Exactly, as Jack is saying, that this is, here comes the answer, 12, and then we can add 5. So that might
Ah,
be dark blue. What about the others, right? So, of course, some of the answers, or one of the colors is 7, which is the right answer. One of the colors is 12. What are the two other colors and why? Let's see. So 7 is the orange one, and it's correct. And what amazes me, and we should go deeper and read the article to see what was the problem here. But in grade 6 and in grade 1, almost no one answered correctly. 12, Tracy, that was a good guess, but unfortunately, it's not dark blue. It's light blue. So it's the most common answer except for fourth grade, right? And then 17, which is an interesting answer and common enough. And then dark blue is other answers that are not 7, 12, or 17. Where does the 17 come from? Where does the 12 come from? Where does the 7 come from, right? Tracy says it well again, adding all the numbers. 8, 4, and 5 makes 17, right?
But I also think that this is really fascinating when we've seen, because we have utilized this in some of our work with SVMI as well. But this idea, I also think that it's about equality for sure, but I also wonder about expressions and like the actual terms themselves. I think that there's definitely something there more there, and that's why I would get excited with re-engagement and formative assessment to help better diagnose where the students are at, so then makes very strategic decisions about where I move forward.
That's perfect. That's
Yeah.
precisely my point here. Because then if a kid answers 12, your your next move cannot be the same as if a kid answers 17, right? It's both are like wrong in a sense, but the approach and the rethinking your assessment that you are, or you rethinking your teaching, right? And the re-engagement techniques that Cecilio was sharing with us need to be informed by the answer, right? And if you anticipate that these will be the most common errors, you can at least have a plan. And then, of course, contingency comes. Kids are unpredictable, lucky for us in our profession, which is super fun thanks to that. But they can be somehow a little bit predictable sometimes, and you can anticipate. And if these two mistakes appear, have a plan, right, to re-engage through questions. Okay, loving it. Now, we have to finish in like 5 minutes. So I'm just gonna plant 3 seeds in the audience, if that's okay, Cecilio. This is gonna be a little fast, but I'm just planting 3 seeds for
Okay.
the ones that want to explore deeper other resources, right? And then showing a last example, and then we finish.
Okay.
So some ideas on assessment on or in building thinking classrooms by Peter Liljedahl again. I already said that at the beginning with the parachuting example. There are 3 full chapters on the book at the end that talk about assessment with very interesting ideas, right? And again, it's not an algorithm that you follow, right? Oh, okay, I will follow this practice and everything will work. No, this is some recommendations on assessment. I particularly love and it's very, very simple, but I particularly love the symbols that Peter suggests that you can use in real time to make quick annotations about what the kids are doing. And then he provides also a few ideas on how to create these rubrics and how to like categorize the questions in a test or in an exam into basic, intermediate, and advanced, and then using these symbols to like make some annotations. And then if you want to grade, there is also some ideas on how to convert this to a number if that's your interest, right? In the last chapter. So first seed planted, building thinking classrooms, right? Oh, this is the idea on how to count these numbers if you are required to do this. So in a summative assessment. Second idea, Marilyn Barnes, right? No introductions needed. She has a wonderful series on learning. We listen, we learn. Well, sorry, we ask, we listen, we learn, right? So there are a lot of examples, very short videos on how kids think and how this is used by the interviewer, in this case, Marilyn herself, to then rethink and reteach this, in this case, these basic facts on multiplication with decimal numbers, right? So this is a very new idea, relatively new idea to me, right? The one-to-one interviews, and sometimes the challenges that we have in our districts don't allow us to have time to do one-to-one interviews every week. But the moment that I tried, I really saw the value of having one-to-one interviews. And if you don't have the time or the structure to do this, at least you can have these interactions in real time in the classroom, right? So most of these ideas, don't think that you need the full one-to-one interview to apply them. Most of our ideas can be applied in a more everyone in the classroom scenario.
And that's the beauty if you have a think, pair, share routine that's fine-tuned and well maintained in the classroom. These are wonderful prompts to even ask at the student to student level.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree. I agree. And then we're not watching the video, unlucky for everyone. But third idea, third seed that I plant, Jennifer Bay Williams resources on assessing and supporting learning of fluency, right? Fact fluency. In her book, 60 Games and Assessment Tools to Support Learning and Retention, she has many tools, right, and rubrics to help you organize this knowledge and to help you take some notes on what is going on, right? I love this one, no presentation needed, right? So just the names and then some annotations on what are the strategies that you expect. Imagine that you combine these with the re-engagement techniques that Cecilia was sharing with us, so that you would have in the titles some of the interactions that you have with the kids, so you can then make some annotations on what strategies have already appeared, what strategies you need to maybe guide the students for them to discover these strategies. You can get ready for this. More tools, just another example on multiplicative thinking, times 2, times 10, times 5, right? And just to finish in these last 3 minutes, here you can see one example of thinking math. And here the task is very simple, times 2 and times 5 tables, only the first part is times 2, very simple multiplications. The first two with the scaffolding of the factors, the last one you need to write the full sentence, right? And the thing is that you can count, the first box is open, so you have the reference, but then the rest of them are covered, so at least you cannot count one by one. Of course, you can count by twos, or you can multiply, or there are many strategies that you could use. And you could use this combined to, or any task you have combined to the rubrics, in this case, for instance, Jennifer Bay Williams rubric, and also the re-engagement techniques that Cecilia, you were sharing with us. But this connects, and this is the last thing that we share with you today, with these resources that we have been developing recently for especially for California, but we are using with many other districts across the US, and it's providing some guidelines for formative assessment. And one of the tools is about anticipating these possible mistakes. This is the first column, right? So in this case, the result of one of the multiplication in the 2 times table is incorrect. This is one possible mistake. Or another one, the equation used to show the total number of objects in the third image of the row is incorrect. Okay, then the student may, so we give you some hints on what is the student probably thinking. There's no certainty of this, of course, and you know the students better, but it's some ideas. And then some help to make progress. So, okay, if this is the problem, what is the solution? Or what is the way to progress? And this is a great match. This has a great match with the re-engagement techniques that Cecilia, you were sharing, and with the tools that Peter, Jennifer B. Williams, and Marilyn Barnes share. Okay, so more info. We will be sharing these links in the presentation. I don't know, Cecilia, if you want to make a final claim about your initiative.
Yeah, so if you'd like more information about the Silicon Valley Mathematics Initiative, feel free to go to our website and click on contact us or more info, and reach out and we'll happily have a chat with you. There are also many tasks available from our database on the Inside Mathematics website. The tasks that were from 2002 to 2009 are all time capsuled and available through University of Texas at Austin Charles A. Dana Center. So feel free to also utilize resources in that space as well. So very
That's
thankful
awesome.
for everyone.
That's awesome, because it's the more we share and use this, the more we have more inputs and better for everyone. Okay, it's sad, but we arrived to the end, and we only have one lesson ahead of us with a question mark. We will see. We will have an expert panel joining myself or Bernat, who have been hosting these sessions, and we will have a roundtable with them discussing on how to drive the effective instructional change in our districts. And I think we explored a little bit some ideas about assessment. I will keep thinking on of course, about the techniques that Cecilia has shared with us. And I also encourage you to think about them and to think about these questions that we need to ask and answer before we start assessing, right? Why, what, and how are we going to assess? And of course, we thank you for your presence here. Thank you for your loyalty. If you have been following us since the beginning of the series, if you are watching the recording, thank you for joining as well. And please give us feedback. This is very important for us. Do you need more sessions, another series in the future? Would you be interested in us visiting you and have some in-person conversation? Cecilia and myself were discussing that we're much better in person than in a webinar where the interaction is less easy. So please let us know your interest, share your feedback so we can also be assessed and improve. Thank you, Cecilia.
Everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Take care.